The courtroom buzzed with restless murmurs as Daniel Hayes stood beside his weary public defender, his eyes darting nervously toward the jury that seemed already convinced of his guilt. A hard-working mechanic and single father, Daniel had been accused of stealing from his employer, a charge that could send him to prison for years and shatter the fragile life he had to build for his daughter. In the back row, 15-year-old Lila Hayes sat stiffly, clutching her backpack against her chest, her wide eyes reflecting both fear and a fierce determination that seemed too heavy for someone her age. When the prosecutor painted Daniel as a desperate man who had pocketed money to cover debts, the jury shifted uncomfortably, but the evidence appeared stacked, and the weight of judgment pressed heavier with each passing minute. Then the judge, Harold Cromwell, a man notorious for his cold manner and disdain for emotional pleas, turned his gaze toward Daniel and asked if he had any last words. Daniel's throat tightened, his voice cracking as he stammered, "I didn't do it. My daughter knows I didn't. Please, she can speak for me." Laughter rippled through the courtroom at the absurdity of relying on a teenage girl's testimony, but the judge, half amused and half irritated, his hand dismissively and allowed her to approach. Rising slowly, her small frame trembling yet resolute, Lila's voice began softly but gained strength when she declared, "My dad is innocent." And Judge Cromwell, she paused deliberately, meeting his cold stare with an unwavering gaze, "If you don't let my dad, I'll make you walk." For a split second, silence hung heavy in the air before the room erupted in laughter, the prosecutor scoffing, jurors smirking, and even spectators chuckling at the bizarre claim. Of a child threatening to make the judge walk seemed ridiculous, especially since Cromwell had been known for years to rely on his cane, the limp of a man whose pride refused to yield to weakness. "Order in the court." The judge barked, slamming his gavel, his expression twisted anger and unease. "Young lady, are you threatening this court of law?" But Lila's answer was steady, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. "Your Honor, I'm telling you the truth. You'll see." The gavel echoed once more, silencing the laughter, but an uneasy chill lingered, as if something far greater than a trial had just begun. The following morning, the courtroom was packed tighter than the day before, curiosity pulling in even those who had little interest in Daniel Hayes's case, for word of the teenage girl's strange declaration had spread quickly through the courthouse corridors. People whispered as they waited, their eyes flicking toward the heavy oak doors where Judge Harold Cromwell was expected to enter, amused, others skeptical, but all eager to see what might unfold. When the doors finally opened, silence rolled through the room like a sudden wind, for Judge Cromwell walked in without his cane, his once stiff stride now strong and fluid, his back straight, his face pale with disbelief at his own movements. He had spent years leaning on that cane, his limp an accepted part of his identity, yet moved as though it had been nothing but a shadow, and every step he took made the spectators shift in their seats with wide-eyed astonishment. His gavel struck, but his voice trembled slightly as he called to order, and though he avoided looking at the defense table at first, his eyes eventually found Lila's steady gaze, calm and knowing, as if she had expected all along. The prosecutor cleared his throat, suddenly less confident, filling his papers as jury exchanged anxious glances, the atmosphere thick with something unspoken that none of them could name. Judge Cromwell adjusted his robes with shaking hands, his jaw as if waging a silent battle within himself, and then, in a voice stripped of its usual harshness, he announced that after reviewing the inconsistencies in the evidence and considering the doubt that he could not in good conscience allow the trial to continue. His words came haltingly, but when he declared Daniel Hayes not guilty, the room in gasps and murmurs, the sound of chains falling away from Daniel's wrists striking louder in his daughter's heart than any gavel. Daniel's arms wrapped around Lila, streaking his face as he whispered broken words of gratitude, while Judge Cromwell sank heavily into his chair, staring at his steady hands with a haunted expression, as if grappling with a truth he could not admit aloud. No one laughed. No one dared, for they had witnessed something impossible, something that defied reason. In the quiet awe that followed, a story began to take root, of a trial where a young girl's faith had not only freed her father but had also made a broken man walk again.